This is Get Real and Heal for high-performing women executives and entrepreneurs, where we discuss all things emotional healing and the relationships with yourself, your man, and your money. I'm your host, Jamila McMallow, wife, mother, certified cognitive behavioral therapy practitioner, mindset and relationship expert with over 20 years coaching and mentoring experience. I know that when you're the one that everyone else leans on, the leader and the trailblazer, it can be difficult to let your guard down, be vulnerable, and tend to your own emotions. So I hope today's discussion will allow you a moment to experience a life-changing realization, perhaps even a transformation. So let's begin and get real and heal. So today I want to just talk to you a little bit about some of the experiences of my clients. I want to share a little bit about their backgrounds because really when we're talking about this issue of mommy issues, it's such a huge thing for us as women. Why? Because our mothers were our living, breathing examples of what it meant to be a woman. Day in and day out, we watched her and we learned from what she taught us by the things that she did, by the choices that she made, by the actions that she took, how she prioritized us or did not prioritize us as her children. So our mother's example was so powerful. And even if she wasn't around, that spoke volumes to us as well, because if your own mother, who carried you in her body for 9 months and was supposed to love you unconditionally, didn't love you enough to stay, then why would anyone else love you? And so a woman who's been abandoned by her mother is going to really struggle with feelings of worthlessness. Because like I say, if anyone on the planet was ever going to love you, it should be your mother. But when she didn't, then why or how could anyone else, including yourself, including you? So I had a client whose mom actually did abandon her, and she was raised by her dad. And it was interesting because her mother was kind of in and out of her life. And when she showed up, it would be like gifts and smiles and all those things. And then she'd go off back to doing whatever it was she wanted to do. And when we started working together, my client really didn't feel like that. She really didn't even use the word abandonment. She just felt like, oh yeah, my mom wasn't around. She had not really made the connection to how deeply she had been affected by her mother's abandonment, because that's what she did. She left and went off and lived her life, got a boyfriend, a new husband, whatever. And it was the parents split up. Not saying that her father was a perfect husband to her mother, but it's one thing to end the relationship, right, with the adult, but it's another thing to abandon your children and act like you're not going to have a relationship with them either. And it really hurt her deeply. It was one of the deepest wounds that I've had to help my client to work through. All of my clients are just absolutely incredible women, powerful, doing super amazing things in the world, helping people. Like when you look at them and you see them, you would never know their origin story. You would never know some of the things that they had been through or experienced it. And it's because they overcame those circumstances, honestly. They, despite that, developed a great sense of independence, a tenacity, a determination, a skill set that serves them well down to today. Everything that we got from childhood, even negative experiences, did not automatically yield a negative outcome for us as far as a behavior, that we chose to embody or carry forth. So I want to share her story with you, and there's a couple others I'm going to share as well, but I want to share her story with you because I think it's the most powerful, in that loss is so hugely painful and significant, to not have your mom around when you're growing up. And it really caused her, because children are, of course, going to internalize everything. And it caused her to become the type of person who would always put on a happy face, never complain, never, talk about her needs. she was completely out of touch and disconnected, from what her real desires were, since she was really more or less focused on just pleasing others and making sure they were happy. And she deeply believed that the only thing that made her lovable, that being lovable meant she had to behave or be a certain way. She did not believe that she was just lovable because she lived, breathed, and existed. However, through our work together, she, of course, was able to heal that wound, and it just had a tremendous impact on not only her professional life, she's an entrepreneur, she has her own business, but also her marriage. It allowed her to now open up and connect with her husband more deeply, more vulnerably share, that fear of abandonment, that fear of him leaving me if I'm not perfect is gone. She's able to truly be herself, knowing, that he loves her and has always loved her. She chose wisely when she chose him, and that he supports her, in everything that she does, even in our healing work together. He just wanted her to be happy. So, when your mom has abandoned you, that is how it can affect you. It can cause you to struggle with those feelings of worthlessness. It can cause you to become a performer, but you can heal it just like my client did and be all the more stronger for it. I have another client whose mother was not the best example. She was a drinker, and she was a total enabler to my client's father, who, of course, was her husband. Her parents were married, and he was a drinker, and I believe he maybe was a substance abuser as well. But for the most part, they were both drinkers. That was their issue, was alcoholism. And so she grew up watching her mother overdrink regularly and enable her father to do the same. And it had such a deep impact on her. And she always kind of viewed herself as having daddy issues. She thought, oh, my mom's so lovable, I have a great relationship with her, et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't until she started working through the exercises that I assign my clients to do to start working through these relationships in these areas that she realized that her mother actually had the bigger impact on her when she was growing up, and that her mother's behavior was actually what was more responsible for why she felt the way she did about herself, why she behaved the way she did in relationships, and why she chose the type of men that she chose, stayed too long, and accepted abuse and other deal-breaking behaviors. So it was, again, an eye-opener for her that her mom was the one who had the greatest impact. See, sometimes because our mother is our mom, right? They probably were the one that was there for us more than our dad. And we just have that natural loyalty to both of our parents, but we all have a sweet spot and a soft spot for our mothers, right? And so sometimes we can sugarcoat the past, and we cannot really see our parents for who they truly are, who they were. And even through this process of, peeling back these layers and understanding how the relationship with her mother was affecting her, it also allowed her to accept her mother for who she was today, like how she is, without judgment. That's the beautiful thing about doing this healing work, is that we're able to accept our parents for who they are, not for who we want them to be or wish they were, not because we are trying to drag them along on our healing journey and feel like we need to sit down and have a heart-to-heart with them in order for us to get over our stuff. You don't need an apology from your mother. You don't need an apology from your father, because you are now an adult. And your mother, because that's what we're talking about here is mommy issues, your mother could not give you what she did not have. So she gave you what she had. And our parents were imperfect, some more than others. And so perhaps what she had wasn't good enough. It wasn't enough. You had some serious gaps, that you've had to fill in. But now you're an adult and you're able to do that, right? You're able to do that now. Yes, those gaps led to some serious mistakes. Yes, those gaps led to some, precarious situations, but you are still here. And as long as you're still living and breathing, you can make different choices, and you can learn, heal, and grow and move forward. So this client, all of my clients are wonderful to work with. Like I said, she's so amazing. She works in a male-dominated industry, and she's just a powerhouse. And she actually ended up meeting a wonderful man while we were working together. And what's interesting is he wasn't a man that she didn't know. He was someone she had already known, but she couldn't see him because she wasn't attracted to him because he was not a toxic man. So when we heal these parts of ourselves, when we heal our daddy issues, when we heal our mommy issues, it changes the way that we think. It changes our belief system. It changes what we believe to be true and possible for ourselves in relationships with men, in a relationship with ourselves, and even our relationships with money. You know, when I'm doing this unraveling work with my clients, it unravels everything, right? I'm talking about relationships with men, but it truly does unravel everything because all roads do lead back to our parents because that was where we started. That's where we started. And so with her, when we started working through these things, we had worked through healing her daddy issues. And then when we worked through healing her mommy issues, this new relationship emerged and it's still ongoing. And she's having the time of her life. And she's just so blown back and cannot believe it. It's like this is the first relationship she's ever been in that hasn't been toxic. And so that's the power of what can happen when you make the powerful decision to put yourself first, to put your stake in the ground and say, I'm not moving any further until I address what's really going on with me and heal whatever is from my past that keeps just yanking me back and shackling me to these ways of being and relationship behaviors and men that just are not serving me. I don't want to feel this anymore. I don't want to be dealing with this anymore. And so she did that, and now she's enjoying, like I said, just an amazing and a wonderful relationship. Now, if you grew up with a mother who was maybe a little more overbearing, like a perfectionist, always was very rigid about cleaning and cooking and what a girl should be doing and training her daughters to do all the domestic work, but catering more to the sons. There are some cultures where the girls are raised this way. And so my client, this is how she was raised. And her mother was very, very, what's the word? I'm not sure the word I want to use, but I'll say a perfectionist, but she was very controlling. That's the word I was looking for. Very controlling, even down to how much they ate, she and her sister, because she always talked about, you don't want to be fat, you don't want to be a fat person, and all this and that. And so my client developed this like love-hate relationship with food. She loved food, the way it tasted and all those things, but then she would eat and then hate herself after and get mad at herself after. And so she ended up actually developing an eating disorder. And not only that, she also never gave herself a break. She was super hard on herself. Her negative self-talk was off the charts. She felt like she always had to be doing something. And if she wasn't doing something around the house, well, then she ought to be exercising. She ought to be washing dishes. She ought to be cooking. She ought to be cleaning. She ought to be doing this. There was never a time where she was allowed to sit down and relax. And this is not something that her husband at the time wanted her to do, to be always working. This was something that she had come into the relationship with. This was a way of being that she had taken from her mother's conditioning and messaging. And as a result, she was always stressed out, and quite frankly, unhappy. She was simply unhappy. And that's because when we are relentless with ourselves, when we drive ourselves like we're a slave and we just don't want to give ourselves a break, we feel guilty if we're not doing something, as if when we're resting, we're being lazy, right? Like we're not allowed to do that. And a large part of our work together, or I won't say a large part, but part of it was me actually coaching her on how to relax and schedule in time for her to literally do nothing and be okay with it, helping shift her mindset around being okay with doing nothing. And so I share that with you because if you grew up with a mother like that, you might have that mindset. You might feel like nothing you ever do is good enough. You might feel like your best is never good enough. You might do an amazing job on something, receive tons of compliments, and you look at it and you find 10 things wrong with it. So you struggle to receive compliments. You struggle to receive commendation because you are always criticizing yourself. And do you know what happens to a person who's always criticizing themselves? You won't go out and do the big things. You won't make the big decisions, the powerful moves, because you're going to talk yourself out of it, because you're going to convince yourself that, hey, this is what's going to happen. And then I'm just going to end up not doing it right. It's not going to be good enough. So why even start? Why even try? This way of being is something I think that is so predominant amongst so many women. We waste so much time and mental energy beating ourselves up for what we should be doing, what we could be doing, what we ought to be doing. When what we ought to be doing and need to be doing is sitting down and doing absolutely nothing and getting some rest so we can stop being resentful and fussing at everybody in our house because we're tired. Okay? My goodness. But through our work together, she was able to learn how to be happy for the first time in her life. She was able to learn how to have a healthy relationship with food and to embrace it and not be terrified that, oh my gosh, I might gain 5 ounces. She was okay with gaining weight, not because she was on the road to obesity, but because she actually was underweight and could, wanted to be and look healthier. And her husband liked how she looked with a little more weight on her, but she was comfortable with a more emaciated look because that's just what had been ingrained in her and had developed from the formulation of that eating disorder. So her being comfortable in her own skin, her being happy, her being okay with resting and relaxation was a direct result of her healing her mommy issues and us doing these mindset shifts and this healing work together. Now I have another client, and this is interesting. Her mommy issues actually stem from an adoptive parent. Now, when we started unraveling this ball of yarn, we still go in the same order, right? We still address the biological parents, whether you're adopted or not, because you would be shocked and surprised, like all my clients are, about how much comes up, even surrounding a parent that you never met, wasn't in your life, or even who is deceased. A lot of my clients actually have fathers who are deceased, and yet they were able to heal the trauma from that relationship despite the fact that he was deceased, and it actually allowed them to come to a place of peace and eventually forgiveness, as they moved forward in their lives. But my client had an adoptive mother who was very abusive, emotionally abusive, verbally abusive, and they were not of the same culture, or they're not of the same culture. And so my client grew up really feeling like the things about her that made her different from the culture of her adoptive mother were kind of vilified and not embraced and not celebrated. And so she was kind of denied access and understanding to the parts of herself that were her, her culture, who she was. And growing up with a mother who made her feel bad because she was a very loving little girl, and she also was very outgoing, and her mother shamed her for all of her positive behaviors and made her feel bad and made her feel like her best wasn't good enough and like she was never going to have anything good, wasn't allowed, couldn't do anything right. She just really, really did a number, on my client's mindset and thinking and feeling about herself. And in our work together, my client has started to unravel these things that her adoptive mother heaped upon her, and she actually has exploded her business, has improved her marriage, which was already good, and now it's like great, it's phenomenal. Her relationship with her husband is even better because of who she is becoming. She was living a life with all this chronic pain and things going on in her body because of all of the hurt and trauma that she had experienced, not just from her adoptive mother, but even going through that process, of being in foster homes and things like that. But then leaving that environment and then being adopted by a family that never truly loved and accepted her, it just added insult to injury and salt in the wound. And so when she became an adult, all those emotions, all those feelings, all those traumas were still trapped in her body. And so she was just really in this constant, consistent state of suffering. And now she's not suffering anymore. She's happy. She is happy and joyful and basking in gratitude and recognizing and appreciating and seeing all of the blessings that are just pouring out into her life every single day. And so that's, again, what can happen when you take the time to focus on yourself, making deliberate, intentional effort to heal the issues that come from the relationship you had with your mother in your childhood. So, I wanted to share these stories with you because sometimes the lesson is in the story. Sometimes we can see ourselves in someone else's experience and understand, wow, I get what it is that I need to do next. Wow, I understand, that really hit home for me, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's why I like to share these experiences with you, because I want you to know that you're not alone. You're not the only woman out here who has had this type of past. You're not the only woman out here who has had these type of struggles and challenges in her relationship with her mother. You're not. And yet, even though you've had those experiences, I know that you have experienced success professionally, but I know that you want more personally. I know that you want more when it comes to your relationships with men. I know that you want more when it comes to your relationship with your husband. And you deserve it. You are worthy and deserving of it. And so if you would like to explore what working with me would look like and how I can help you on your healing journey of healing these places of your mommy issues, even your daddy issues I talked about in a previous episode, then absolutely reach out to me on my website, CoachJamila.com, and we can have a conversation. But I want to thank you for being here for today's discussion because, like I say, as women, our mother's example is the most powerful one from our childhood because she is the one who taught us, what being a woman looked like, sounded like, and acted like. And so how we experienced her presence or absence affected who we are as women today. So I hope that you found this discussion insightful, and I hope that you had a breakthrough, and I'll see you in the next episode. Visit CoachJamila.com, where you'll find the links to connect with me on social media and more information on my private coaching for high-performing women.